It's the very, very, very last day of the week. It used to be. It's the 8th day of August 2024. We usually do our show Sunday to Thursday. Today's Thursday. And we decided we're going to just do the shows as much as we can. And we're going to cover an earthquake to start off the show tonight. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. So we have a big earthquake in Japan. We're going to jump right into that story. It's a very, very important story when it comes to anything like Japan. And when you turn to the media, I have a tendency to use colorful language whenever I talk about the media. I'll take you back. There was a 7.1 earthquake in southern Japan today. I'm going to show you where that was too. First, I just want to remind you of what Japan has already done when it comes to earthquakes. Here's a similar serious earthquake. And they had a serious earthquake. It was in a major trench. And I just want to go backwards, though, for a minute. 2018. Earthquake buries homes because Japan uses a different scale. This helps articulate it. Earthquake buried under homes and buries homes under landslides in Hokkaido, Japan, which is the most northerly island. The most northerly island. It's a big island with millions of people. 22,000 people were involved in the rescue effort. 22,000 people. So that's an awful lot of people, right? And after the effects of a magnitude 6.6 magnitude, which is your typical scale that you're familiar with if you're in North America, for instance, or Europe, is anywhere else on the planet except for Taiwan and Japan, who happen to use a scale known as the Shindu scale. They also use the magnitude scale, but the media likes to conflate them sometimes, pair them up when they're not appropriate. So the Shindu scale is 0 to 7, and it goes in increments of 0.5. So 0, 0.5, 1, as 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, all the way to 7, but not 7.5. So it stops at 7. So it's on increments of 14, whereas the Richter scale is on a scale of 100. So it's from 1 to 10, each of them have a point, right? So, 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, all the way up to 10. And then there's 2.1, or 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, all the way up to 2.9. Then it's 3, 3.1, 3.2. Whereas the Japanese scale is 0 to 7 based on 0.5, 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, etc. So they're quite different. And on the Richter scale, each of the increments of 100 is orders of magnitude of 100 in seriousness. Because an earthquake is not, it's not like, it's not confined to like a little block in a community. Half a country is going to feel it. So it's really special, right? It's like, it's undeniable. Okay. So Japan uses Shindu scale. So when they tell you they had a 7 earthquake, it was actually a 10 on our scales. Now they're going to try to say, well, one is shake and the other one is seismic movement, but it's easy to argue, and argue successfully, that the idea of the Shindu scale, both Taiwan and Japan are earthquake-prone countries, and the earthquakes are very visual, buildings toppling over, places ripping apart, major landslides, like it's inconceivable. So let's go to the Wikipedia page. 2018 Hokkaido Eastern earthquake, it's 2018, registered a maximum of 6.7 magnitude. They got an M for magnitude on a maximum intensity scale of 7. So they just conflated both of them together in the same sentence. You can't do that. They're two different scales. One's 1 to 14 in increments of 0.5 and maxes out at a 7. And the other one is 1 to 100 based on 1 to 100. So if you count from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 100, that's the increments that everybody else uses. But Japan and Taiwan earthquakes are so severe neither of them should have nuclear power plants. Because remember Fukushima, everybody over 60 should be prepared to die at Fukushima headlines. 60 and older should be prepared to die, rather. All right, so they had 130 aftershocks. This is 2018. We're going to just jump. We got a lot of stuff to get through. Register of a magnitude 6.7 magnitude intensity scale of 7 on the Shinto scale. So a 7 is a perfect earthquake. So I claim a 6.7 on the international scale, the Richter scale, but a 7 on the Shinto scale. So it gets confusing when you don't know there's a difference, right? And so a 7 is actually a 10. That's what a 10 would be. And so you take 10 divided by 7 and you got 1.428, and you multiply 1.428 by whatever the Shinto scale is. So Shinto had upper 7, and they don't really do a 6.7, they do 6.5, right? But in reality, there can't be that, because an earthquake is so big and so wide and so powerful, you can't relegate it to a simple number. The intensity difference between 0.5 and 6.5 and 7 is unbelievable. So it shouldn't be downplayed, but that's how they get away with it, to quantify putting nuclear in their country. 9.5, a 6.7 would be a 9.5. So 9.5, Dana, would be a big earthquake. And you would know about it, right? You would be familiar with it. This is the Hokkaido earthquake part of it. And what you're looking at is the payloads on all sides of the mountains has been shaken free. Have you ever seen a picture like that? Have you ever heard of an earthquake where all the sides of the mountains, thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands, millions of years, all of a sudden lose their payload? I don't know of it. In January the 1st, they had an earthquake where a 3,000-year-old fault line, 3 to 4,000-year fault line that was dormant, had ruptured. There was over 1,500 landslides. And when you talk about per landslide, you would consider this as one. And again, when you see the footage of the different terrain, the landslides are really something. This is something that anybody talks about earthquakes should be referring to, right? Saying the great Hokkaido earthquake in 2018. But if even the experts, you talk to the majority of them, they don't know about this earthquake because it was downplayed in Western media and European medias as a 6.6, 6.7. Most people couldn't care less unless it's over a 7. Not everybody, obviously, but most people couldn't care less. And so when you look at the landslide, you can see the displacement is quite significant. And when you see these aerial shots, as far as you can see, all the mountains have lost their payloads. That is crazy stuff. So imagine if there's communities in those mountains, for instance, right? It's a 9.5. Was there 6.6? 6.7. So they do upper 4 is a 4.5, and upper 5 is a 5.5, and upper 6 is a 6.5. But because obviously this is not a 6.5 international scale that does this kind of damage, right? And one of the reasons was the epicenter. You can see the epicenter up right there. Well, the next mark is the X, and the next marker is where the nuclear power plant is too. So in the scope of a earthquake is not very far away, and because it's on land, it should get infinitely more prominence, right? But it didn't. And there was a nuclear plant there, and we don't know how much damage was caused. After a 7.1 magnitude earthquake, so now we're back to today. This is 16, 17 hours ago. and welcome everybody that's out there. Hope you're having a great day. Let's get after it. And so what I'm trying to impress upon you is that it's not above the media or Japan to lie. At all. It's not above them at all. In fact, they'd be quite happy to lie for you, to lie to you. They're really good at it, and you'll never apologize for it. So this was on the southern part of the country, and you can see it covers a huge area, right? That's a third of the country shaken. And on their scale of, now this scale is 7, right? So they got 1, 2, 3, the colors for 3. Then for 5s, they got 5 plus, and then 6 plus got their own colors. So everything there has been multiplied by 1.428, 1.43 in order to get the animosity equivalent in the Richter scale, which is the average the smart countries would use. This was 18 miles off the coastline, and it was around 18 miles deep. So it's a very shallow earthquake. But now they have issued the first megaquake warning for fears of a massive earthquake in the Nankai Trough, which, so off the coastline they have the so-called trough. What that is, that's actually a continental shelf. And that's why they issued a tsunami warning, because this was in the vicinity of what they're worried about that would release the tension on the continental shelf, which is a large displacement and is known every 90 to 200 years to cause a catastrophic earthquake and a catastrophic tsunami. And so what's the odds Japan can get hit with 2 tsunamis in such a short period of time? Turns out it's pretty realistic. Now some are saying it wasn't actually 2, this was the same earthquake, and it lasted so long it seemed like 2. They say they were over a minute apart, and that earthquakes, of course, don't last very long, right? Just like tornadoes. Well, tornadoes actually last a lot longer post-2011 than they did pre-2011. 2 powerful earthquakes hit off the southern Japan. A 6.9 magnitude followed by a 7.1 tremor struck off the... Now, they got 2 nuclear plant sites up there. And within 30 seconds, the media was out saying there was no adverse effects at the nuclear power plants, which are like big cities. It's impossible to quantify an assertion like that in less than a couple of days. A 6.9 magnitude earthquake, and so the fact that they had that earthquake there, should they close down the nuclear power plants? Because clearly this is a demonstration and they had a significant aftershock after. And so I'm sure they're thinking about that. Should they close the power plants? And of course, nobody wants to close their power plant because that's a crime in that death cult. The USGS, United States Geological Services, said that the first quake hit at 4:42 p.m. They're 12 hours ahead of me or something. At a depth of 33, it's just turning daylight over there now. At a depth of 33 kilometers, but 29 kilometers southeast. So this was the only story where they told you the distance from an actual place. So it was right off that coastline. It was right off the southeast coastline. Let me get set up on this particular. And so this was only 18 miles off land. It was 18 miles deep. And so typically that's what they'll give you, a 29 This was the only story that actually gave you the distance away, which is 18 miles. The second struck less than a minute later, but it turned out that this was the same earthquake. So it lasted for 2 minutes. That's the story that's coming out now, which means this is really serious, right? The second struck less than a minute later at a depth of 26 meters, 20 kilometers northeast. The Japanese government set up a special task force in response to the quake. They always do that because Japan's a disaster anyway. In Canada, these headlines were shown up. No tsunami threatened BC after powerful Japan earthquake. They registered a magnitude 7.1, which, as I showed you earlier, you got to be concerned when you hear the word magnitude. Now that would be a 10 on the Richter scale, 10.4, I believe. And the waters centered in the waters off the eastern coast. It's a very shallow earthquake. It's very violent shaking typically. There's some pictures coming up. And when you see the name Mari Yamaguchi, you have to be extremely concerned. Anytime they roll out that person, that's a notorious asset for the intelligence agencies. And they're usually, it's a female, her story is always the official story. That's coming from the official apologists themselves. And so it is rolled out at AP, which means 1,800 medias immediately, the spider bots will snatch it and regurgitate the story on their sites. Raising a level of concern over possible major quakes stemming from an undersea trough east of the coast. So they're expecting major quakes with an S. 9 people were injured on the southern main island, Kyushu. But the earthquake, as we know, was centered in Mizaki. Let me keep going here for 1 second. Get back. I know. Here. Don't forget to click around a little tiny bit, if that's your thing. Let's keep going. Holding emergency meetings as they reassess and raise the level of the risk of the major quakes associated with the Nankai Trough east of southern Japan. The agency said the tsunami waves are up to 50 centimeters, 1.6 feet, showed up, which means it was bigger than a 7.1. Japan issues first megaquake warning for Nankai Trough after a strong tremor. This is not a tremor, these were earthquakes. There was a higher chance of a major quake in a nearby area that could trigger a powerful tsunami. So clearly, they're talking about the continental shelf dropping, right? Because that's what you need to cause that tsunami, a significant tsunami, is the continental shelf to go, because you've got continents that are spring-loaded, and when parts of the continents decides they're going to release that energy, it's preceded by significant earthquakes typically leading up to it. In the case of the Noto Peninsula, the Ishikawa Prefecture, January the 1st of this year, they had an average of 18 earthquakes a day. They went from 20 a year to 18 a day to more than that. I think it worked out to 24,000 earthquakes in just a couple of years. Small earthquakes. And then and now this one was dormant for 3,000 to 4,000 years is the best guess estimates. And when it released, it done unbelievable damage. We do believe the Shika nuclear power plant had lost some of its inventories from its fuel pools due to the connotations that they had made about the fuel pool building, that they had a significant earthquake in the basement of the building. You can't have a basement earthquake here. They cover half your country typically. So it's a very strange connotation, right? And that the community a few kilometers away, we still haven't seen footage of it. But they acknowledge that the damage was on the scale of the Shindu 7 scale, which is the animosity equivalent of a 10 on the Richter scale. And that the fault line, which is 3,000 years old, in January the 1st, which is the Noto Peninsula, Ishikawa rather, and the Noto Peninsula, the Ishikawa Prefecture. We were so concerned about it, we covered it for almost 30 days because we were worried about the Shika plant. And to this day, we still haven't been able to. All we can say is they were 150,000% lying about every facet of it because we covered it for 30 days. We documented it, I should say, for 30 days, right? That's what I do. I basically document stuff. And it's not that, it's just telling the truth is different than telling a lie. So when you watch my videos, I'm telling the truth. So the video is really fucking weird because you're not used to that, see? It's hard to find people like that. So you're like, I don't know what to friggin' make of that. He got a lot of good points, but it was weird. And people just they can't put their finger on it. What it was is they first time in a long time to come across somebody who told the truth. And their brain doesn't know how to work that. Their brain is like, this guy got to be bad. I don't like this guy. He doesn't make me feel right. He doesn't tell me lies and make me feel good. The waves can grow exponentially very quickly. That's my biggest flaw, right? Is I tell lies that don't make people... I tell the truth instead of lies that make people feel good. I'm going to report on what the news is, basically. And particularly when it comes to nuclear, I'm going to dig a little deeper. Okay, a whole lot deeper. That's what they call me, a nuclearproctologist.org, because I like to go deep into the story. The quake hit at a depth of 30 kilometers, 18 miles. But there was only one story to tell you how far off the coastline, because that's actually important, and that's what should be the first thing you heard, isn't it? I bet you got loved ones down there. Wouldn't you want to know how far off the coastline it was? The agency said the chance of a major earthquake there that could trigger a powerful tsunami is relatively higher than usual for the next week. So buckle up, because we got Israel and Iran ready to go pop. We got a significant earthquake. And if Israel and Iran goes pop and they start using nuclear and then an earthquake goes pop at the same time, which one do you think the media is going to be reporting on? If you got a big old tsunami, which destroys thousands of people, everybody's going to be glued to their social medias watching it. And in the background, here's nukes going back and forth between Israel and Iran and Pakistan and India and China. The next thing you know, everybody's like, oh, crap. Japan experiences about, this is just a guesstimate, 4 earthquakes a day that people can feel. With some kind of seismic activity recorded once every 5 minutes. It's a very active place, and it's on a fault line and a ring of fire. Radio station shakes. And so I just do a video montage of some of this stuff. And you'll see the curtains wiggling back and forth in the background, maybe or not. Let's do that again. So there was significant shaking, but I don't know what there are much better videos because I've seen them. They'll show you coming up. After a 7.1 magnitude earthquake, Japan issues the first megaquake warning. Well, yeah, I was right in the wrong spot. for fears of a massive earthquake in the Nankai Trough. I keep calling it Trough, I apologize. 2 powerful earthquakes hit off southern Japan. Tsunami advisory issued. 2 powerful earthquakes hit off southern Japan. So there's quite a few stories where we're reporting 2 earthquakes, but there's actually only 1. And that's why I'm so worried. And I know Sue had sent me a text and asked me, was I doing a show on this tonight? And I had just found it probably 15 minutes before it. And I had opened up a bunch of stories. And then I was still doing stuff, right? And I said, well, I'll come back to that in a little tiny bit. I started gathering it up and see what's going on that they're acknowledging. But the first thing I seen was Mary Yamaguchi reporting. And I was like, okay, well, this is obviously going to be important. And the fact that both this and Israel and Iraq are both possibilities of popping in the same week, I got extra reasons to consider it. The U.S. GS said that the first quake hit at a depth of 33 kilometers and about 29 kilometers south. So that's the same story. That was supposed to be removed, not repeated. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. The second struck less than a minute later. The country is haunted by the memories of a 9.0 quake in 2011. It sent 3 reactors into meltdown. And it's only been about the last 4 or 5 years that we heard that framing of that kind of narrative in that particular way sent. And a lot of times it'll say sent reactor, not reactors. It'll say sent reactor. And the word sent, S-E-N-T, sent reactor into meltdown, or into melt even, at Fukushima nuclear plant. Generally they won't use, they just say Fukushima or something. Extremely vague and not an accident. And the most serious nuclear accident since Chernobyl, but Chernobyl was a single reactor. And then they got Israel's defense minister warned that Hezbollah chief may cause the Lebanese state to pay a heavy price. So they're saying if Iran attacks Israel, Israel's going to destroy Lebanon's infrastructure for kicks. Why they're sticking broomsticks up the behind of prisoners, right? We all seen that over the last couple of days. And they justified it too. Because in the Torah and the Talmud, that's legal. If you're not Jew, it's okay for them to do that to anybody. I was like, oh my God. And you even got Scott Ritter out there reporting on it. They raided his house, didn't they, yesterday, last night or something? The FBI. They didn't arrest him, though. I don't know what to make of it, but he came out very strongly 2 days ago and basically bludgeoned Benjamin Netanyahu in the 40-minute video that I watched several times, actually. He brought it, man. Got to give him credit. He definitely didn't hold back. Japan residents share horror clips of the building shaking in a 7-magnitude earthquake. So now they're saying that was a 10 out of a 10, right? A 7-magnitude earthquake. That's a very interesting way to frame it. So we don't know for sure because they got a tendency to conflate the Shindu scale with the Richter scale and use them all in the context of a magnitudes, which is a Richter narrative, not a Shindu narrative, right? United States Geological Survey's estimated tremors were felt by about 11 million people. 11, this is at the mall. I cannot remember the last time I went to a mall, to tell you the truth. A very long time ago for doing that. And you got everybody starting to crouch down and hang on. So when people can't stand up, And you're not seeing people standing up without grabbing onto stuff. That's usually a significant earthquake. That's a significant one, I would say. They were felt by 12 million people. Follow-up earthquake at 4.8 magnitude. Again, you might want to multiply that one by 1.428 or 1.43 or something in order to get the Richter scale. Because most likely when you see these numbers show up, because like that was a long earthquake. You had Mari Yamaguchi coming out and reporting it, so clearly they're trying to cover up something. Otherwise, why would they use Mari Yamaguchi? Japan warns of heightened risk of a megaquake. That's why. Just let me talk about Israel, Palestine. Iran, Hezbollah, etc. for a second. So the last time when Iran fired missiles at Israel, it was only with a 5-hour warning, right? And they fired 300 Scud missiles and drones. And but it was really interesting what they had done. And I'm just going to digress for a minute. I apologize for that. We'll go right back. What they had used three different, they're like the slowest missiles that they got. Literally, it was none of the hypersonic missiles or anything like that. These were all slow missiles. They gave them 5 hours notice so they can get ready. And that the missiles he sent in, one of them, for instance, so the way the Iron Dome works, it sees a missile coming. Now it starts calculating. When the missile gets within range of their countermeasure, which is another missile, and they're going to pick it off out of the sky or blow up in proximity to it. And that's how they're going to stop it, right? So these are shrapnel weapons meant to detonate the one that's coming in before it gets to infrastructure, which don't have building codes can handle the missile. And so what they had played this interesting game, I thought, other people are talking about it too, is that when the missile come in and this missile was on its way, it released 25 dummies, decoys, that spread out, but had a signature of missiles. And so now the Israeli self-defense targeted, sent up another 25 to target the decoys. And then it released another missile with its own engine that now powered itself out of the trajectory of the anti-missiles and just powered itself down. Because they're going after a target. They're going to meet a target up in the air, right? So they're going to meet at point whatever. But if that fires off another rocket, it's not meant to change direction. So clearly they were aware of that and studied it. And then they were able to go down and attack the missile launch site itself that way and destroy that. So now they're clearing the battlefield, it's just the air defense system, so that they can come in unopposed with bigger and better weapons. I guess that's what they're going to be up to now. But they were using these slow, and so when they were coming across different countries like Jordan, that Jordan had knocked down some of them. And so Iran knows where those batteries are. These anti-missile sites are going to be in different countries now, right? And so, but now they waited how many days? 7, 8, 9 days? Excuse me. But instead of attacking within 5 hours, now they're 5 days later. But the stock market has lost $2 trillion, 1,000 points. And they've never seen that before. And so there's just absurd amount of people went bankrupt, never seen that coming, right? And the only reason you would see those connotations, and then the Americans sent a big fleet down of aircraft carriers, extra battalions of aircraft, and 8 battleships, which tells you, like, and their narrative is they're going to defend Israel, which it doesn't mean they're going to attack Iran, but they're going to defend Israel from a missile attack that some people say could be sustained at 300 a day for a straight year. So Israel would no doubt use nuclear in that position, because it's never been beat up before, right? And it's going to be a sore loser. I mean, the fact that they're doing the things they're doing alongside them is, and the whole country's going along with it and defending it, is pretty bizarre. I don't have anything else to compare it to. I really don't. You know, that kind of a genocide would complete. And I played the clip for the other night, showed the clip, where they're talking about, it's, according to their ideology, it's morally legal to starve the 2 million Gazans, the Palestinians, to free their hostages, their 170 remaining hostages or whatever it is. So it's okay to starve 2 million people to free some Israelis. I mean, that a lot of condemnation worldwide from that lately, in the last few hours I noticed, but that's their mentality, because I got a whole folder of the video clips of them, different well-positioned people in Israel saying they should drop nuclear bombs, they should kill them all, and the list goes on. But so they're not attacking Hamas, they're attacking the Palestinians. In all of those videos, the politicians are demonizing the Palestinians, not Hamas. Right, you know, I was showing you that clip of an Israeli soldier up on his Twitter account saying, I killed 13 Palestinian children today. And a picture of him with his sniper rifle, right, bragging about it. So obviously he wasn't sent out to kill Hamas. Without Hamas, they got no one fighting back, and so now they got to give it up, right? As long as they got Hamas, they can destroy the whole country and justify it by screaming the words Hamas. Every time somebody challenges them, they'll say Hamas. It's like being a kid and having an invisible friend, and every time you do something wrong, your parents ask them, did you do that? And you say, no, it was my friend, right? My invisible friend done it. That's all they're really doing. These megaquakes have been recorded once every 90 to 200 years, with the last one in 1946. 78 years ago. What is it? 54 and 24. So, yeah, 78 years ago. Which is in the right time frame when it comes to a mega earthquake, 90 to 200 years. Like, who's old enough today to remember the one they had 90 years ago? And there's no one around today to remember the one 200 years ago. And who's to say how often it was before that? But the thing was, that was the continental plates. And so they know that's going to let go. They don't know if it was going to be a million years down the road or next 30 minutes. But they know it's going to happen, right? Because it's a continental. It's where the continental shelves meet each other. Experts say there's a 70 to 80% chance of a magnitude 8 to 9. We've been covering that over the last couple of years. Quake striking somewhere along the trough in the next 30 years, according to the Kyoto News Agency. Worst case, well, as many media has reported, and we covered a lot of them. Worst case estimates suggest more than 200,000 people could be killed in the earthquake. About 11 million people felt it. So the numbers could definitely go higher. Now they're talking about a tsunami. Right, so this earthquake is what they're talking about is a massive earthquake followed by a large, and we get the numbers coming up in a bit, large earthquake followed by a large, wide tsunami. See people running under their desk. And so they started I see a little landslide there. This one media came out and showed an old picture of Fukushima. Let me go backwards for 1 second. I really dislike them when they do this, because what about, you got loved ones living there or something, right? And it's not, and because it's not true, it's a terrible thing to do to somebody or a lot of people. Japan's, and of course, this brings back a lot of bad memories, right? Japan earthquake magnitude 7.1. Cars dance fearfully at a traffic light. Tsunami warnings issued. Operators at a nuclear power plant in the affected region begin immediate inspections to assess any damage. So the fact that they're doing inspections meant there was something going on there. And we most likely will never get any documentation unless you go after Freedom of Information Act in the future. And so they were definitely showing cars starting to rock, and telephone poles and street lights rocking, right? So it was a significant. That's a significant problem when you got earthquakes doing that. And when you have a nuclear power plant that goes south when this is happening, like in 2011. So let's just think about that for a second. So it's not, because a lot of people will just say, you got a tsunami, it's horrifying. You got an earthquake, that's horrifying. There's something else much more sinister in the background. In my case, there's always something sinister. Nuclear activists to be constantly spied upon. One Fukushima may destroy the whole country. We still haven't got to the poll tonight, have we? I forgot about it. With 1,000 earthquakes a year, it's actually 1,500, I showed you earlier, and a 3,000-year record of massive tsunamis in Japan. Is Japan stupid to use nuclear power? Should your nuclear power be turned off in a country that has catastrophic earthquakes? And we already got 30 votes on that. That's cool. So here's what could happen in your country or another country that has already happened. I got a bunch of these I want to run through. Nuclear activists to be constantly spied upon. This is how the industry works, right? One Fukushima may destroy the whole country. The collapse of a whole country is possible. So you have a tsunami, big earthquake, it takes out your nuclear power plant, and you can have a collapse of a whole country. So that's why we got a poll asked in that particular question. With 1,000 earthquakes a year, significant ones that people feel, and 3,000-year record of a massive tsunamis, is Japan stupid, because that was the right word when I was doing the poll, to use nuclear power? Well, clearly it is they were stupid, right? And the investigating chairman even acknowledged that in 2013. Think about this one. So you have an earthquake, you have a tsunami, your nuclear power plant breaks down, and a deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. So a power plant breaks down, but it could wipe out all the species worldwide. Wait a second. We got a power plant in our country. So it can not only wipe out your country, but can take out your whole planet? Oh, crap. Fukushima radiation still circling the globe. That's pretty. Levels are consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. This is the French study based on 16 days of radioactive fallout. So when the model stops here in a moment, that's 16 days of radioactive fallout. So after 16 days, the whole planet is no way to escape it, because after a few days, the rest of the planet is buried. Now this plume they're talking about is 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. That's crazy, right? So cesium-137, which is what we're talking about, 1 million, 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, but the French government, it pulses energy 600 feet every second. So You either got to get rid of the earthquakes or get rid of the nuclear power plants. I don't care which one you do, but you're going to have to do one of them soon. Former U.S. government official, the elephant in the room is Fukushima radiation when it comes to the Pacific Ocean animal die-off. Radioactive fallout. Worker at Reactor 3 says the spent nuclear fuel is gone from the spent fuel pool. Guess where it went? Right there. This was the plutonium X oxide fuel pool, by the way. This is, I got 6 more of these. Hang on. So this is Hala Krishna. He's a pro-nuclear disguised as a journalist. I'm going to get out of the way. And he's going to say, the academics were doing a presentation, and he's going to ask this question, isn't it better to forget about investigating nuclear fallout and just enjoy nuclear?
Krishna, freelance writer for Yuka Fuji, and I'm a generous member of the Scientists for Accurate Radiation Information. I'm pro-nuclear power generation. Restart of the nuclear plants much more beneficial than worrying too much about the fact-finding or the...
So basically threatening the scientists, right? And the reason is because children with 11 atoms a kilogram start to see heart problems. You put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. So it's pretty hard to find it to protect your loved ones, right? Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms a kilogram of cesium-137. We only got 3 more of them. So 50 atoms a kilogram is permanent damage to the children's heart. 6 in 10 of Fukushima children tested have diabetes. And the head of the Tokyo area medical clinic says we're expecting diabetes in children from Fukushima radiation. They also have seen an increase of thyroid tumors. It used to be 1 in a million to 2 in a million, and now it's 358,000 out of a million children with thyroid tumors. And in adults, this is the last one, in adults, 50 atoms a kilogram lead to irreversible lesions in your vital organs. Japan's limit for cesium is 137. Is 137. And so Japan had a significant earthquake already, right? And when you think about the damage, because we see these videos, buildings are rocking and all the signs and cars are rocking, and it doesn't, the average person doesn't understand there's many other things we got to be worried about, like our food being poisoned by radioactive fallout, for instance, right? And you really got to be concerned about it. You know that after that earthquake, the last big earthquake they had, that they're expecting to get another one, where there's happened to be nuclear power plants could do the same thing. There was 105,000 storage sites where they were storing 1-ton bags of radiation. They actually picked up 30 million 1-ton bags of radiation. And of course, the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is a public relation firm for nuclear, is not a regulator and not in a position to judge or approve Japan's reuse of the 30 million 1-ton bags that are stored on 105,000 sites, which is 30 million 1-ton bags on 105 of radiation. And that each kilogram is equal to a dirty bomb, basically. Another thing they done, they had this big earthquake and big tsunami, done a lot of damage to Fukushima nuclear power plant. And instead of building a real wall, they built a ice wall. Now, the money they had, when you divided it up among the employees, and they had 260,000 people worked on an ice wall and nuclear meltdowns. And so if you paid everybody $1,100 each, you had no money left to build an ice wall. Unless everybody worked for free, there's zero possibility. There was 60,000, let alone 260,000 people working on that site. It's zero possibility. Because we know the numbers, right? And so you should be very concerned by these revelations. Tokyo tap water showed radiation traces, but the plant operator had restored circulatory, what the hell is it? To bring the power to all 6 units and turn on the lights at Unit 3 late Tuesday. So that story is on the 23rd. That's an interesting statement that they had the power restored to all 6 units on the 23rd. It's quite a frightening statement, actually, because the buildings were destroyed. There was no way to restore power. So why did they say they did? It's lethal doses there. Hope, this was the 21st also, another story. Hope rises as power is restored at the Fukushima plant. I'll show you this picture. Video, actually. Have successfully reconnected all 6 reactors to the power supply. Let me show you a picture of the reactors. Here you go. And explain to me how they restored power to buildings like this. And the building directly beyond me is Reactor 3. That's Reactor 3. Do you really think they restored power to this building a couple of days later? Or the stump? These are stumps of buildings that were 19 stories, 65 meters, 195 feet, right? So how are you going to restore power to a building like that? How does that actually work? How does it work? How do you restore power when a building doesn't even exist anymore? Cooling Fukushima possible after connection to the grid. This is the next day, 22nd. That's France 24. That's the French government. Same people who made the model I showed you earlier said all 6 of the crippled Fukushima nuclear reactors were reconnected to the national grid on Tuesday. And some people will say, no, Dana, they're talking about the Donny plant, which is 10 miles south. Dana's the ugly twin sister. Well, actually, the Donny plant only had 4 reactors. Fukushima was the biggest one in Japan with 6 reactors. So I do believe they're talking about Fukushima because it's clear what they're talking about. Everyone on Earth has been irradiated by Fukushima. Here's one study, and this is an academic study out of California. Where's that radioactive sulfur now? Possibly in your pants. When the news broke yesterday that a previously unreported type of fallout from Fukushima, radioactive sulfur, which was the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs, had reached the United States in March, nearly all mainstream media didn't mention it. It tends to concentrate in the testicles, and 360 atoms of radioactive sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs, these are hot particles, may have been inhaled by Californians after Fukushima each day. So for insects and birds, mammals and animals and stuff like that, you and humans, you would start to expect to see them sterilized in increments over time, over generations. But in animals, it'll show up much quicker, right? And insects will show up in months. And in birds, over a couple of years. And same thing with marine species, the migratory marine species. So we have similar studies of iodine-129, iodine-131, of cesium-137. We have iodine-129 at 220 million atoms per liter of water in the radioactive fallout. And it would have been saturated with the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs also. These are nasty hot particles which destroy your immune system and compromise the integrity of the health of all species. After a 7.1 magnitude earthquake, Japan issues the first megaquake warning. And Japan's legacy of lion is something to be worried about. Here's some of the medias, by the way. You got media from America, media from United Kingdom, media from Hell, known as CNN, and Cecilia Vega, ABC Australia, the highest, biggest medias worldwide, coming out pretending that they're at the top of a building that don't exist. So don't think that if they have another massive earthquake and there's another nuclear meltdown, that they're going to come out and tell you, because they're not. And this is why we covered Shika so extensively, because we know they've done it before, and you can be sure they're going to do it again now, because they got away with it, right? And the nuclear industry is falling apart. But that don't stop them from destroying your ability to have an alternative energy like geothermal. Just let me explain. Let me show you the numbers from January the 21st of this year from the energy renewables versus, there we go. So what was the capacity, a new capacity last year, 2023? Nuclear goes backwards again as wind and solar enjoy another year of record growth. Nuclear power suffered a net loss of 1.7 gigawatt capacity. So it lost 2 large nuclear power plants last year. It went backwards. 2 large, full-size nuclear power plant. Whereas renewables capacity additions amounted to a record 507 gigawatts, which is equal to 507 large nuclear reactors, animosity equivalent of nuclear in renewables, came online. With no, you don't have to run away, you don't have to sacrifice everybody over 60 if it breaks down. Pretty good deal, right? So now they're trying to do this nano-nuclear small modular reactors. And they're going to put them in every earthquake-prone spot on the planet. They want to put them everywhere. Like Canada and the United States were talking about putting 1,000 alongside the highways, so electric trucks can just pull into the little nuclear power plant and plug in for an hour and charge up their transport trucks. And if their brakes give out accidentally, which never happens in transport trucks, I'm sure, and they run over that little nuclear reactor, and then you have to close off that part of your highway for 1 million years. And you can't breathe the air in 1,000 miles for 1 million years without getting sick eventually from it. AI driven, so they're going to use artificial intelligence. This is the next scam they're going to run on us. AI nuclear, AI driven services. Everything has the potential to save significant time and resource by transforming the way licensing and regulatory processes are handled by using artificial intelligence. So they're trying to bypass the regulatory agencies, the hands-on, and they want to be able to, and they already have basically gutted the rules and regulations for these small modular reactors that don't exist, by the way. But they're, in order for them to exist, they got to use a very high grade, weapons grade uranium plutonium, known as plutonium mixed oxide fuel, but a very high SA, high grade, and it produces 5 times more fuel rods when you scale it up to the capacities. It produces 30 times more, 31 times more something high level waste, and 35 times more intermediate level waste. Now, if you get rid of the lethal doses immediately, the rest of it still kills you eventually. You know, like they got a saying, right? Oh, if you get exposed to 3 sievers, it'll kill 50% of the people within a week or a month or whatever. Yeah, but what they stop, and that's where they stop, right? But the other 50% dies the next month. Nobody survives it. These exposures, you get sick and you die eventually. So I skate clear of nano if I was you. Nanonuclear energy inks a deal. This is the proverbial memorandum of understandings we see popping up for the last 4 or 5 years. Since this narrative of small modular reactors, they're trying to lull you into complacency by promoting something that actually doesn't exist and is not likely to exist, because renewables curb stomped renewables last year and the year before and the year before, and every year it almost doubles in capacity. And they expect by 2026 there will be between 2020 and 2026 there'll be 4,800 gigawatts, which are equal to 4,800 large nuclear power plants. But of renewable energies will come online, new stuff from 2020 in just 6 years. And that's equal to all the gas, oil, and coal plants worldwide combined. It's 4,800 gigawatts. That'll be surpassed if we didn't have the artificial Ukraine-Russia event where United Nations made 195 countries put embargo against the only country that had the commodities that they need to sustain a population. Simply not. Now, I watched a video today, it's a farmer, I believe it was in the United Kingdom or something. Don't quote me. But it's he had sunflowers, and sunflowers are the only plants that follow the sun each day from daylight to dark. Every hour they'll be facing directly at the sun. And that's the only plant that does that. But here he was, now he's a farmer, has been doing it for decades, and all of his plants was facing away from the sun. It was the strangest thing I ever saw. So they polluted the planet so much. Let me keep going here. We'll get through this stuff here. Yeah, memorandum of understandings. A 2-year non-binding. So it's just an agreement. Good old boys handshake, right? Kevin Kong, founder of Everstar. We covered him quite a few times over the years. Nanonuclear Energy secured approximately $18 million in public offering. Now, they don't have a reactor. There's 100 companies just like them out there, and a lot of them are on the stock exchange. They don't have a product. And it's highly unlikely they will, because renewables are able to dominate. And so they say, well, the wind's not always blowing. Yeah, but if you had wind all across your country, the wind is always blowing somewhere. And it's easy to transport the energy because of Nikola Tesla's patents, right? So simply not true to suggest that the wind's not always blowing, because it is somewhere. And if you put most of your windmills in the mountains where the wind always blows, you would get rid of that narrative quite quickly. They're often included 900,000 shares of common stock, an additional 450,000 shares. So they're not on a is aimed at supporting. So they're not on the stock market, but they do have stock out there per se, right? And they raised enormous amount of money like the rest of them, but they don't have a product. They're not. Let's put it this way: they're not buying land to build it on. They're not putting a permanent dent anywhere. In other words, they're not committing. And everybody got a different design, but they all got the same problem. Where all of them are going to be the same technology we're already using, and they don't meet the standard. Like Rolls-Royce in the United Kingdom, their small modular reactors are almost the same megawatts and size as a medium-sized reactor. Quite a coincidence, but yet they're going to call it a small modular reactor when it doesn't have any of the attributes. And so they're going to name it Zeus and Odin. And Zeus is the sky and thunder god who ruled as the king of the gods on Mount Olympus, who ruled as the king of gods. This is unbelievable. Why would you name your nuclear power plant something like that? And Odin is a widely revered god in German paganism. Wisdom, healing, death. Healing and death and wisdom, royalty, the gallows, knowledge, war, battles, victory. So, again, what is going on that they named their reactors is very unusual, is what I'm saying to you. And he has a magical horse, a spear, and a single eye, and rolled over, you guessed it, Valhalla, the Hall of Fallen Warriors. So there's something really sinister going on there, if you ask me. In addition to this, Nanonuclear entered into a partnership with no less than Curio Solutions to optimize nuclear fuel recycling, which is illegal in Canada and the United States, I might add, and for a good reason, for its advanced portable micro-reactors. So shipping nuclear reactors across your country is the worst idea conceivable. And the fact that they want to make a lot of these, how long before you destroy the ecosystem? Not very long. Once the fuel comes out of the reactor, it has no containment. And so what are you supposed to do with it? They got no solution right now. Everything is still splitting atoms into the environment, right? Pilgrim Nuclear Plant wastewater discharge plan denied. And I know what you're saying. And Dana, you're supposed to do this like 6 shows back. Well, we had all kinds of other stories, Mr. Smarty Pants. I've done the best I could. I'm getting it done, so my apologies. The company decommissioning a nuclear disease factory in Plymouth cannot discharge 1 million plus gallons of industrial wastewater in the Cape Cod Bay. All right, so let's talk about this for 1 second. So what they're talking about is the fuel pool. They got all the fuel rods out of it. Now they have the water left in the fuel pool. And the reason the water is radioactive because the fuel that was in it, and this is what's crazy about this story, is that every day that fuel pool boiled off 120,000 liters. And there's multiple fuel pools. There's usually 2 at the top of each reactor building, 2 for each reactor. They're stuffed with reactor cores because they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet. That reactor core is hot, and that's how they boil water. And when you take it out, it's still hot. And what hot means is it's splitting atoms. So how many atoms have you got to split to boil a glass of water? Well, that's enough atoms to become a dirty bomb in any of the laws on this planet. What a dirty bomb is, the atoms produced to boil a glass of water is enough. So once you take it out of the containment and put it in the fuel pool, there's no container. There's no containment. Everything is vented up to... So still splitting atoms for 1 million homes. And remember, every couple of years, they put another reactor core in there. So now it's 2 million homes. A few years later, there's 3 million homes worth of reactor cores. They're still splitting atoms. Those atoms are boiling the water that's in the pool. They're getting absorbed into the water. The water is boiled off and releases the atoms into the ecosystem. There's no containment. It's the same amount of atoms as it was when it was producing power for 1 million homes and businesses. And so 60 years down the road, you every day you had to put 120,000 liters of Bohr-rated special water back into that pool. And that becomes saturated with isotopes from the splitting of the atoms and boiled off into the Hudson River or whatever river. I was thinking about the Indian Point that time. My apologies. Boils off into the ocean, right? Cape Cod Bay. And so ultimately, they were releasing the fuel pools into the ocean and into the air every single day. But now that they no longer got fuel rods in the pool, the water left over is so radioactive they can't get rid of it. But yet every day it boiled off 120,000 liters. And the typical nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. And they suck up the radiation and they ship it off and poison you in your supermarkets far, far away. And so the idea, because the people that are protesting it don't understand the bigger picture that I just explained to you. Katie Wood bets on Sam Altman-backed nuclear startup as AI heats up energy demand. Remember her picture in one of my videos back there? That's when I was supposed to do the show, but I didn't. She's a CEO and founder of ARC Investment Centers, and she invested $1 million, $1.8 million $1.9 million in Oklo. And so they're interviewing her. She got lots of money to throw around, but this is meant to bring in the investors. She bought them cheap. Now she gets up there on TV, and the main propaganda machine promotes those stocks. Over the next couple of days, all kinds of people buys the stocks. The stocks rise, and she sells hers right away and takes their money. And then the stocks will dive down in the near future in a week or two, and she'll have her money plus the big kickback. That's how they do it, right? And they've been doing this post-Fukushima nonstop. Particularly, I can't remember that nasty media out in British Columbia. Yeah, sadly I can't. The Globe and Mail. They were doing it 3 times a week, artificially inflating uranium stocks, and then they would crash next week. So every 2 or 3 weeks they would do the same thing for 2 or 3 or 4 days. The stocks are going to go up, and if you get enough people to buy it, sure enough, the stocks go up. See, the stocks went up. Well, that's because they were pushing it everywhere. And then now they get a little frenzy, and people start, I want to buy. It's going up, and it goes up the next day and the day after, and then it crashes on Thursday. They've been doing it brutal to everybody, particularly the factory workers that are retiring and just stealing and everything they got. The world's first coal nuclear fusion technology is presented, the path to unlimited energy. Really? You want us to believe that's unlimited energy? Really? You think we're that gullible? You really think we're that naive? Unlimited energy? That's not what I'm looking for. What did I do wrong? Oh. Here we go. I'll get there. I got too much light over me, is it? I got to turn that light up on the ceiling there, down a little bit, I guess. If I had more hair on my head, it probably wouldn't look that bad. I pulled it all out doing this stuff. Yeah, the world's first coal nuclear fusion technology is presented. Could be true. Typically, it's not. As the world looks for a cleaner way to meet its energy need, fusion is considered the best way to produce unlimited energy. I'd be very cautious in investing in anything to do with nuclear. I mean, like, the technology will exist at some point, but by then everybody's going to hate it forever anyway. The problem is they killed off the species with 80 years of perpetual emission from the nuclear plants, right? They wrecked the species. Goods to prevent workers' heat stroke exhibited in Tokyo. They're so clever down there, aren't they? The company had developed the product as those engaged in decontamination work following the meltdowns at Fukushima. Japan had to endure sweat and stuffiness while working in protective suits. Japan said Tokyo, to TEPCO, in charge of the nuclear plant, said he burnt 7,000 paper suits every day. And a paper suit at a nuclear meltdown is not a protective suit, okay? All right? So anyway, the technology fits on your neck for your arteries. And it's a coolant plate that draws heat from your arteries. It's like a heat pump for underground, like a geothermal. So geothermal is the best technology. Here's why a barge was spotted offshore near the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station in Lake Ontario. The Great Lakes is the third biggest body of fresh water, drinking water, on the entire planet, and it's completely saturated with nuclear plants. Saturated. And so that barge was out there, not I can't remember the story. We'll get to it right now. It's in anticipation of a geotechnical assessment supporting refurbishing the Pickering nuclear power plant. And because it's the Ontario Provincial Government, OPG, who's going to oppose them again? And his contract partners recently completed similar work near the Darlington Disease Factory, which was supposed to be closed, right? Forever. Fisheries and Oceans Canada authorized the work. Well, why wouldn't they? That's the government too. And refurbishing Pickering Nuclear Generating Station would increase Ontario's gross domestic product by $19.4 billion and create about 11,000 jobs per year. Yeah, but geothermal can solve all of your problems right away and half the price, and you don't have to have thousands of employees every day hoping neither one of them screws up. Spain's 1 gigawatt Trillo nuclear power plant gets a 1-year extension. Additionally, the council reported favorably on the radioactive waste and spent fuel management plan. There is no plan. They all got the same plan. They put it in a pool and leave it there where it's boiling off radiation all day long into the ecosystem, disguised as 120,000 liters of water, right? That's released. And each liter is saturated with anthropogenic man-made radiation. Virtual information proposed for Bruce C. nuclear power plant. That don't matter because we're way past that. That don't matter because it's simply never going to happen. But I mean, they're doing it on the Great Lakes, which all the Great Lakes now are surrounded by massive nuclear power plants and nuclear fuel pools, right? Or nuclear dump sites. The whole Great Lakes, the Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, are saturated with nuclear dumps and nuclear power plants full of nuclear waste. Lake Huron is one of the 5 Great Lakes in North America. 23,000 square mile surface area. It's a big lake, folks. And a shoreline of 3,800 miles. And a length of 206 miles, but it's all broken. It's a beautiful lake. World's largest island in there. Where will the 2029 asteroid hit? So there was a lot of speculation that the asteroid in 2029 would hit Earth. But I don't think that that's real, even though you can see there's a lot of media. And what I done was, you can see I can search 2027. I was searching 2060 or 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029. This is 2029. I was like, oh, I don't like this. This is 2028. This is 2027. Strange, wasn't it? Where will the 2029 asteroid hit? Discovered in 2004. Initial calculations raised concern about an impact and stirred a buzz within the scientific community and general public. But now I don't think it's, if I remember correctly, the path is going to be closer than some of our own satellites. Are they going to have to move satellites out of the way? The 3 football fields, 31,000 kilometers from the Earth's surface, so we're okay. But nuke blood scandal. The current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is urged to hold a public inquiry over the nuke blood scandal. He was tackled in Parliament by an 87-year-old nuclear veteran denied access to the medical records and compensation. The soldiers that participated in the nuclear detonations in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and that, 80s and 90s, all of them are considered part of the experiment. They were left unprotected on purpose so they can be studied and their children. Right, that's acknowledged. The nuke blood scandal showed troops were subject to blood testing because all the soldiers will talk about how they took blood tests after every nuclear test. Another thing about nuclear bombs when they were done on land, the ones that were done underground, but of course they all vented directly into the environment and into the atmosphere at very high numbers because the water for 1,800 miles around a nuclear explosion would change the structure. And it would change the structure to the bad structure, the structure where it's very difficult to use. If you use unstructured water, unstructured water is water that's affected by electrolysis or chemicals. It will change the structure. Water is pretty unique, right? It's the only thing that exists in all three, liquid, solid, and gas. It's the only liquid that does that. And it's unique because without it, we don't have life. And that 70% of the planet is water. We're water. Everything we eat is because of water. And there's an ocean above us. On top, there's no whales up there, but there's an ocean above us, right? And there's a big ecosystem itself. But water, it rains all the time. We drink water. We excrete water all the time. We're all connected. We might not eat the same food, but we all release water, perspire into the ecosystem. And so water is by definition a god, because without water, there is no life. Showing troops are subject to blood tests. And so taking the blood tests was on purpose, right? Nagasaki, Hiroshima, for instance, they only studied the external doses. They didn't study the internal doses. And then the numbers now were used to quantify how much radiation you could be allowed to be exposed to in a nuclear accident or a nuclear contamination or anything like that. And so the numbers you're using to quantify your safety is based on, by the way, it's based on natural stuff, not even man-made. But the stuff that where they did actually take the numbers from man-made were based on external doses, not based on internal doses. And in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, there were significant external doses, there's no doubt about it, but there were significant internal doses. It was impossible not to be. And if you go look at my anniversaries of the Nagasaki Hiroshima each year, I'll provide you with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of academic studies quantifying that particular assertion, right? Jack, now 87, took part in Operation Antler at the Maralinga, which is in Australia, South Australia, in 1957. And they used to wait for the wind to blow across the main population of Australia. And so they had, I can't remember the numbers, it was 12 or 14 airplanes were going up releasing markers, smoke markers. And so they were able to predict the wind extremely good. And so they used to wait for the wind to blow across, like Adelaide, which was the capital at the time, and places like this. And they were seeing numbers of 97,000 counts per minute of just gamma, cesium-137. These are just horrifying numbers. They actually set off 700 dirty bombs also in Australia, where they wrapped plutonium 241, 242, 238 in conventional explosives hundreds of times. Curium isotopes were used, and uranium-235. And these places are still contaminated today, 70 years later. And so is Maralinga. You can't go to Maralinga. Tropical paradise, like Christmas Island, like the Marshall Islands. All of these are radioactive wastelands. Marshall Islands, there's actually a million square kilometers in 2019 study that was too radioactive to be hospitable, to be able to live there. The Ministry of Defense says that in the United Kingdom has no statistics on nuclear veteran war pensions, but campaigners have calculated only 1.6% are successful, and most of them on appeal. So you have people that in their 80s and 90s, at this stage obviously, you got to be at least that age, are still denied health care. No, it's all in your head. It's radiophobia. I go on home now like a good little soldier. The UK, it's a terrible... And in order for that to happen, you're talking about, what is it, 7, 8, 9, 10... Quite a lot of administrations have to, brand new governments for 6,000 new government employees have to turn their backs on the victims for that to work that way, right? It's a policy, but it's also administrations that could change the policy don't. And so it's a very cruel thing to do, is to let people die of radiation injuries, because it's a very heartbreaking injury. It's a very difficult way to die. I wouldn't wish it. I guess I would on the nuclear industry, but I wouldn't wish it on anybody else. The UK is the last nuclear power on Earth to insist its weapons tests cause no harms. Let me get here. Small modular reactor could form part of it. I thought about that stuff and I was like, what would Australia's worst case scenario look like? Well, it wouldn't look like that. You would have to abandon Australia. Well, the worst case scenario was somebody would go there and blow up nuclear weapons and 700 dirty bombs and wait for the wind to blow across their cities, because that's what Britain done, right? And go to their own archipelago, an incredible tropical archipelago, and destroy that too, which they've done worldwide. The nuclear industry sought out beautiful, just stunning, magical archipelagos and wrecked them, disintegrated them in many cases, or turned them into radioactive atoms and radioactive ash. All the tropical paradises, the French Polynesian islands, the British destroyed Christmas Island and Marilinga and Montebello. The Americans destroyed the Marshall Islands. You're talking about an incredible... That was a nursery for the Pacific Ocean too, right? And then Russia done the same thing. China done the same thing. India, Pakistan done the same thing. It's pretty heartbreaking. And now all these 80 years later, we're on the precipice of a massive extinction event. And now it looks like we're going to World War III. World War IV, because Fukushima was World War III. It stung everything and everybody on the planet. It is what it is, right? That's it for me tonight. I'll be on the water if everything goes. We have too much wind today. I'll be on the water, on the ocean tomorrow, or the lakes, not sure. I haven't made up my mind. Just bear with me here, get back on track. That's what I got going on there. Let me come into the poll and have a look at this big poll we got tonight. Will 1,000 earthquakes a year and 3,000 year record of a massive tsunami, is Japan stupid to use nuclear power? I believe they are, because we already seen the results, and I showed you some of what the fallout does. We also went down some of the nuclear stories here tonight for everybody. Just remember, they're growing food right alongside of millions of one-ton bags of radiation in a nuclear wasteland. So that's probably something you want to avoid if you're as smart as you think you are. That's probably a good idea. And they got 105,000 sites like that, and they're storing these one-ton bags. And almost all of them, they're growing food close by. Shout out to James, Lou said. Hi, James. Thank you. James donated 200. And we're going to chew through that tomorrow. quite a bit of it. I'm going to have to travel quite a ways. And we're not seeing any birds. Or like sparrows and finches and robins. And it's just it's unbelievable. We're not seeing any of the migratory birds. And the forest, there's silence. Hopefully I'm probably going to be doing another show tomorrow night, so check back tomorrow. And I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Hooks for everybody. I'm going to close the poll down. Thank you everybody for participating. And we'll see everybody on the other side.
Keep coming this way, a little bit further. Keep going. Come on, we're getting it. Woo, you guys are awesome. As you can see, the homeless have done